your 96 gallon trash barrel, then you just put them in your trash barrel, or have that for your regular weekly thing. Or if you filled up your 96 gallon trash barrel and you still had yard waste, then it's in their proposals you would be charged either a dollar 50 or $3.50, depending on which company it was. And I thought, just my opinion, I thought $1.50 for an extra, whether it's yard waste or you just had a lot of extra trash 1 week, $1.50 seemed reasonable. $3.50 seemed kind of high. But then their prices weighed out differently on other parts of their proposal. It wasn't like one was consistently more expensive on everything. They kind of all shook out to be fairly even. But just as far as that extra, if you have extra trash or extra yard waste that you want to put with trash, I thought $1.50 was fine. And $3.50, I was hoping if we do negotiate or have the opportunity, that's something we could ask a Republic if they could come down a little on that.
I agree with you, but I mean, $1.50 doesn't seem like much to a lot of people, or $3.50. But people living on fixed incomes, all this is making a difference in their lives. What we are doing here, and it is becoming so expensive to live in this city. And now you're asking us to put something else on our water bill. And people are very unhappy about this. I've spoken to people in my neighborhood. They don't like this idea at all because costs just keep raising and raising in the city of Inglewood. And they're talking about this as a monopoly, and why is the city doing this where you're taking away our freedom of choice? So, I mean, sometimes what isn't a lot to you may be a lot to a senior who is on a very, very tight income. So I'm just asking everyone to consider that. Thank you.
Okay, and Jeff has raised his hand to speak.
Yeah, just I think it's absolutely, we should be taking cost into effect, and we should be comparing what the current average rates are that are paid, which I don't have it right in front of me, but I think was around 25, somewhere between 25 and $30 a month, based on
less
the survey.
Than
that. That's what the survey results, if I'm remembering.
Yeah, but the survey was, I couldn't answer the survey because it asked questions
Carson,
that I couldn't answer.
Please?
Yeah, the survey is just very limited.
So my other point was that I think we should be keeping, as we're going through these issues, kind of a running list. Because if we do reach a point where we want to go back to the haulers and say, whether it be a full formal proposal or a negotiation, like on this yard waste point, for instance, I have some others, Dane brought some up, that we might want to, is someone just keeping track of all these separate issues, or should we be taking notes? Because I think it would be good to run through, once we've gone through the proposals, what these outstanding issues and questions are, and then as a group we could make a determination about whether we feel like they should resubmit supplemental materials, or even consider a revised RFP altogether, so we can make sure we're thinking through all these additional issues.
Yeah, Jeff, I am keeping track. I'm trying to keep track, and I've, like, for our previous meeting, I went back through and kind of noted things. So that I'm trying to capture everything, but I think that's a great approach.
Carson?
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Jeff. I won't do that anymore.
No worries.
Carson, you're next.
Yeah, I had a question for interpretation. Member Brinker, so when you're saying the $1.50 or $3.50, you're talking about the additional bag pickup on and so, like, would that be interpreted as per bundle of branches?
I was interpreting that. I suppose that's a question. I don't know if I interpreted right, but I had figured if the extra bundle of branches was about the size of a 96 gallon bin, then they would charge you that extra $1.50 for it.
Per bundle. And then would that be going to this environmentally friendly yard waste place? Because this...
No, it would be just with your regular trash. And, Gandhi made a really good point that that's not going to the right place. Of course, now it's not going to the right place anyway. So that's kind of status quo.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
it also depends, it's more of like an environmental event when there's like, at least that's when I have to deal with branches, is when there's a big storm and suddenly I have a ton of branches, and it's piles of that I have to, it takes me hours to bundle a bunch of branches. And then so far I've never had to pay $1 to have any of that taken away. I agree with, remember Kawanabe, is that right? Am I saying it right?
It was close. It's Kawanabe.
Kawanabe, remember Kawanabe? That I would prefer it to go and not be in the landfill. But if it's going to cost me a whole bunch, I'd probably just let it go landfill.
Yeah, we're kind of all over the place, but their yard waste prices and compost prices were probably a lot higher than any of us would have liked to have seen. And their minimum participation rates also seemed pretty high for us to reach. And so that was kind of disappointing to see. I'm not sure that we would get, was it 2,500 takers for Republic and 300 for waste management, minimum participation for both compost and yard waste. And I was also curious why those weren't combined into one program or one minimum participation, because I would have thought compost and yard waste would both go to the same organic facility. So I'm sorry that takes us off in a different direction, but since we're talking about yard waste, I guess it is relevant. But I didn't see that as necessarily being viable for this first round of trying to get this tested out for the city and get it, acceptable to all the residents. I just didn't think we would meet those minimum numbers.
Anji, you're next.
Yeah, and to that point, I think what I'd like to say or suggest is that we put the scenario list to these service providers and get this matrixed information as far as like the cost per scenario, just so that we can look at all these different things like the trash and also talk to them about historically in Lafayette, what happened over there, like how many did you actually get, or was that a city compelled program? So I think to answer a lot of these questions about cost, and it looks like a lot of them are stemming from cost, it would be getting that visibility across the line, a 360 perspective of all of the scenarios that I think Jeff was talking about with compiling.
Yeah,
Steve?
good idea. And that was one of the questions that I sent to Maria, like, why are these costs so much higher? I was looking at yard waste and compost specifically, but why are they so much higher than the costs that other cities that have gone to organized trash? Why are compost prices so much higher? The other range seemed to be at the low end $5 and at the higher end maybe $11. And I had kind of figured in my head that maybe we'd get bids around $8 extra for compost a month. So when it came to be, what was it, like 16 and 30, that was kind of shocking to see. And I'm just curious, that would be one of our questions to ask the providers, is why the costs are so much higher than other cities. They'll probably say that maybe we don't have the same volume or number of houses as other cities. I don't know, but I'd still be curious to find out.
Okay, so I have Steve Ward, then Carson, and then Matt Adams.
So first I'll say that I agree with the point that's been brought up about the branches. I subscribe currently to Republic, and that's not part of my subscription, but it's not something I would use anyway. I would pay a tree service to haul that stuff off. I've learned from experience it's much easier to do it that way for me. But the 2,500 compost subscribers was a pretty sizable red flag to me, because I thought that was somewhere near the target number for total households that we would have in the service. So can you elaborate on that, Maria?
Yeah, we have about 9,600 accounts is what I've calculated. But 2,500 to me, that minimum that they set is basically telling me they don't want to do it, because I don't think we can get, so let's say that's roughly, what did that be? A little less than a third maybe. They just don't want to do it. And to try and educate people at this initial stage, just about the base program, and then to get them to sign on for 2,500 households to sign on for composting, it's like, wow, it was so deflating to see that. Because I just don't know that we can get there in this first round. 300 maybe, with waste management, but not 2,500.
Carson?
Just specific to your, you wanted us to respond to Republic. The couple specifics I had on Republic were, so they're pushing for a 4% increase rather than 3%, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd be like, well, we wrote what we wrote in the RFP, and then they think that they can make a comment like that. I just don't get that. I don't even know what to say.
And then they did the same thing with the opt-out fee, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. So I can't even comment or give you an answer.
Matt?
Excuse me, but great questions to ask them, Carson.
Sorry. And Matt?
So I was just wondering, I agree that really the third thing we need to compare here is what people are currently paying. Is there any way to get that data beyond the survey itself? Is there any way to know what the current rates are for these companies or all companies operating in Inglewood?
That was one of the questions that Christine asked me yesterday or the day before. And the problem is they don't publish their rates. Nobody publishes their rates. We did try to get as part of that survey what people are paying per month. We could ask, I could ask each of you maybe to send me your bills just to see, and we could compile that as kind of a snapshot in time, but we don't have nor a source of a way to get good data on a wide spectrum of people. And what I suspect, because based on what we heard at those public hearings or public meetings, was that it's all over the board. And they might lure you in with that initial good price. And then this just happened to me, actually. I've been getting the same price per month. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, here's your new bill, that's $12 more per month. And it was COVID, related and this and that. And maybe that is, or maybe that's not, but that's what the feedback is. So it's more qualitative data than it is quantitative data that we have.
Do you think we could ask them their average rate for all of their customers in Inglewood, as well as their lowest and their highest?
Yeah,
and
we can ask them anything.
Good. Let's do. And also a sense of how their rates the first couple years differ from what their rates would be after the first couple years.
Cheryl, you're next. Cheryl? Cheryl, are you there?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay, I am so sorry, technical difficulties.
It's okay.
Well, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Back to the compost. I was just curious also why the bins are so large. Why would you need a 65-gallon bin to compost, especially if you're brand new at it? And maybe if we could go with smaller bins, we could reduce the cost. And if we could reduce the cost, maybe more people would sign up for that service.
Good question.
And then, okay, and I just had one other comment also. This is going back to Marcy's comment about if the recycling and the composting is taken care of properly. I did see in the waste management proposal that they did invite all of us to go down to the recycle facility as well as the compost facility. And I would be more than happy to go check it out. I don't know if anybody else is interested.
I'd be stoked. I think that'd be cool.
I would too. That'd be cool.
Same.
Yeah, definitely, because that was one of the questions I had, was the differences in their recycling facilities, given that Waste Management really touted their brand new state-of-the-art facility, and I have no way to compare that to the one that Republic was using. I think it was GFL. And is it just how they wrote their proposal bragging about it, or is there really a significant difference?
Dane, you're next.
I just had a comment again on the compost. Yeah, I definitely agree with the size, but I was also thinking about, at least they mentioned picking up weekly with the compost too. That seems a little excessive. I was wondering if they would be willing to do, bi-weekly or something like that might make it more manageable in terms of pricing as well, because, from my house, I guess if we're not including yard waste, I would probably have, maybe a couple of gallons, at most, depending on what's there. So something like the 32 gallon or whatever the smallest version was would be possible, but also spacing it out. And that might allow us to cut down cost and also increase the likelihood. I think that if the price is lower, we're more likely to hit our target. The other thing is can we try an initial compelling everybody in the city to compost? I know certain cities have done that. My brother just moved back from San Francisco, so that's an exaggerated option, but it is one of those things where they make people compost, and they also charge more for people who throw away more. So it might cause more people to recycle as well as compost, so it might divert more of that yard waste to the compostables, move it to other areas, and it might make it worthwhile for people to buy a 96-gallon bin for their compost, so they could get rid of their yard waste as well if they're going to the same facility.
Neighbors might share them too. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just a comment on the bi-weekly versus weekly. I think the reason for the weekly is so that it doesn't accumulate and then attract like raccoons and mice and things like that. It's not so much the volume as that kind of downside to the compost.
Jeff, did you still want to speak? I think I accidentally took your hand down.
Oh, real quick, I was going to mention the weekly part too. I know in Denver they have opt-in compost service and it's bi-weekly. And I don't know what their experience has been. I used to have it when I lived in Denver years back, and I didn't have any issues with it, in a lid, in a large container. I do think there are legitimate questions on this add-on compost point, because it's been a topic that there's been a lot of interest in. I think the survey reflected that as well. I really do think it's worthwhile going back or asking the question to explore bi-weekly, potentially smaller bins. And, the minimum participation, I thought the exact same thing, Director, that the 2,500 was just, nope, we're not gonna do that. And as something that there's a lot of interest in, yard waste could become a part of that too. I do think there should be options for yard waste pickup aside from just compost. No pun intended, I just thought these compost bids were kind of trash. And it wasn't very, $30 a month on top from the first provider. I just don't see people buying into that. So I was pretty disappointed in these compost bids.
So then I have Carson, and then Cheryl, I'll be coming back to you. So Carson?
Just in regard to cost, a lot of people have received these door hangers. I'm sure most of you probably have. And I did look into that. That's this Waste Services I mentioned earlier, and they're offering a fixed rate of $16 a month for 96-gallon waste, $5 extra a month. So for recycling as well. And then that includes yard waste, obviously landfill, not to the ideal place. But that's what we're up against as far as like citizen perspective on cost is 16 a month guaranteed for 2 years for waste. And a lot of people are probably jumping on that. And that's provided by, like, the service is actually fulfilled by Waste Management. And within that, we know that there's markup because Waste Services is the one doing it. So, we know that Waste Management can provide it cost-wise for less than 16 because there's enough in there for Waste Services to be doing the billing and customer service out of whatever they're getting out of that.
Okay, Cheryl?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
Oh, I'll take your hand down. Thank you. There's, oh, I have
Nancy,
one.
I don't know how to raise my hand. I don't see the option anymore. I'd seen it at one point, but I only see participants, share screen, and record.
If you hit
You-
participants, it's on the bottom right on the participant
Correct.
pop-up.
Steve,
Thank you. Okay, great.
Steve, you're next.
So I think one of the differences between that flyer and what we're looking at RFP wise is a big one is the requirement to allow collection in the alley or the curb. On the flyer, they tell you where you put your trash. On the
But it is
program that we're
alley.
looking at, we choose which one we want. So that in and of itself adds some cost. Then there are other services that were specified in the RFP that this flyer, they kind of just get to pick what they want. So there may be some room for the committee to adjust the desired services in order to shoot for a lower target price. But those are some of the considerations that are potentially getting left out when we say, oh, the private sector can just do it cheaper.
Marcy? Marcy, I see your hand, but I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Here
I
we
have
go.
to keep unmuting.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, everyone.
We gotcha.
It's, but with the $16 a month with waste services, that does not include an administrative fee. So I think when we're talking about all these services or these additional fees for composting and for some of people who cannot bring these heavy carts down to the alley or to the street or curbside, that's an extra fee. I mean, I just believe we're talking about a lot of extra fees here. And I'm hoping that the citizens who, whatever decision they make, is that they are very well aware of the fees that are attached to this one trash hauler program. And, and then you have, of course, the administrative fee. And so what I'm wondering is, it's all well and good to say, it's $15.46, but when you start adding up all the fees, it's quite a bit more than that, I believe, with the administrative fees. And then also, I know this has not been brought up, but I still don't understand the part about if your trash is not picked up one week, that the city gets the credit for that. So, I know I'm opening up another can of worms, so to speak, and I'm off subject, but I would just like everybody to, think about all the fees that are involved going forward. Because this waste service is $16 a month. That's it. No, nothing else. And if I were a citizen, that's what I would go for.
Kanji?
My question was actually just towards the alley maintenance. So if we're having a decrease in the street maintenance and upkeep, are we diverting those funds to upgrading our alleys? Are we going to get paved alleys, which I would love, right? But just a consideration for if we're having all the trucks now go through the alleyway, does that cause additional harm because we're already getting the slipping and sliding in the mud season on my alley.
So the way that it was presented in the RFP is that you can put it out either on your alley or on the street. And we have that goes beyond choice, because in some cases people physically can't put it in the alley or physically can't put it at the street. So we have to provide basically both options. But to your point about the paving of the alley, that was always, I believe it was Waste Connections who, refused to go down the alleys and would then force people to go out to the street side. But we have been going through, we're about roughly 40% through the city of kind of regrading our alleys. We haven't gotten into a program to pave them yet, but we are regrading them to make them more stable.
You accidentally muted yourself, Maria.
Sorry. So we've been getting better feedback from both citizens and the waste haulers that the alleys are more accessible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dane?
Yeah, I actually was just responding to Marcy's comment about the fees and stuff like that. I was just pulled up my waste management bill here, and I was looking. Let's see here. I have a fuel environmental charge of $23.90 or $23.56. Regulatory cost recovery charge $3.75. Administrative charge $6.50. You know, right now, you know, we probably re-signed up for waste management maybe a year ago to drop the price, and it's $118.65 every 3 months. So I'm averaging out at about $40 a month. And, you know, at least based on the base costs of just, because all we have is recycling and garbage, we're already averaging out quite a bit higher. And my guess is that, you know, that teaser rate that they've got everybody trying to come into for the first 2 years is going to go up significantly, or they probably already have those fees built in there until you get your first bill. You know, they don't see that there's fees because, I don't know, you see that on Excel bill, you see that on your water bill, you see it on your Comcast bill, it's all the same. We all end up paying fees, and I definitely agree that it stinks, and we do need to pay attention to that in terms of our total cost. But, you know, I think we need to make sure that if we decide to go with one of these companies, they say, yes, these are the costs. There is no, you know, other BS fees that just keep getting tacked on and on and on. And that might be one big thing that we don't have to get because we don't get the COVID-19 charge or something like that as well.
Carson?
I on the fees, when we evaluate this, it'd be nice to know, like, what is the total fee that's going to hit the citizen? Because what we're looking at in the Excel sheet, this is pre-city admin fees, right? So, you know, I think that's important. I think that's important for us to be able to know what the city's thinking there.
Okay, Jeff?
Totally agree. We should have a 360 look at all of the fees involved and be able to compare apples to apples. I'm just curious, does anyone have that waste services deal? Because I was thinking the same thing. There are likely fees tacked on top of that. I would love to see someone who's enrolled in it and what their bill looks like.
I just switched to it, but I haven't gotten a bill yet. So I've been at, like, mine averages out to like 25 with Waste Connections. And so I took this because I wanted to see it, you know, but I had already paid my 3 months forward for Waste Connections. So it switches for me on October 1st. And then I'll get a bill and find out if they put more on it than the $22 or whatever.
Yeah, I'd be really, really curious to see that. And maybe if anybody can ask their neighbors if they have it, if they have a bill now, we can take a look at. But while we're on the cost subject, I guess it's probably makes sense in understanding that this is not inclusive of fees, but should we just go over really quickly what the fees look like? At least I'm looking at the 96 gallon, which, you know, is one uniform option. One hauler and this is for trash and recycling, was $18.90. Another hauler was $18.55. I think I figured out which hauler was which from something they said in one of their proposals throughout this, but I forget which one it was. I think for 96 gallon, for the options on size of, I forget what we're calling it, the choose pay as you throw. It was a little bit higher for trash and recycling, again, $19.35 a month and $18.80 a month. So, I mean, I think for most, depending on what the fees do, I know for me that would be a reduction. I'm paying waste management right now, and I think my bill's like 90 and change a quarter. So it would represent a reduction for me, but I think it's worthwhile for us to just baseline and level set what at least they've come forward with. Obviously, composting and other things would be an additional amount, but it would be a reduction for a lot of people, I think.
Well, depending on what the admin fee ends up being too.
Right.
Christine?
One of the questions I have when we interview them is why their price for 96 gallons for pay-as-you-throw is higher than their price for 96 gallons for their base. Everyone gets the same size. I don't know if any of you know that offhand. Maybe it has to do with the automation of their trucks. That's something I was curious. I thought a 96 gallon would be a 96 gallon. And then another comment on the fee conversation, which I think is really important, especially those teaser rates. Those drive me nuts. And one of the things I really like about the potential for a citywide program is to have a guaranteed price for 5 years, where I know that my bill is not going to suddenly go up by 50%. Without me expecting it. Those rates where you have it for a year or you have it for 2 years, that can be really jarring for some people when it suddenly goes up on year 3.
Director DeAndrea?
Yes, thank you. I just want to tell everybody I'm trying to call up some of the documents, and so I'm going to get back on my back connected to my PC, and so I'm gonna, no longer gonna see my video, but you should still hear me. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, Carson.
Actually, you can come back to me.
Okay, Kanji?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I wanted to level set as well. And then add a question to just the list is the contracts examples that they provided over. They seem to be all over the board as far as the number of households comparative to the overall contracts. And so wanted to get a little bit more insight into the discrepancies between those.
Carson, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to Member Brinker's point about having like a fixed, like knowing what it's going to cost, that is a benefit, and that could, if we do, get a good deal basically, and the city admin fees aren't too high, and we are actually pulling this off with an increase in service by having Ally for both, then that actually could be a benefit for the fixed income people. I know, like when I spent a period of time knocking doors, and I talked to a lot of people who are fixed income and concerned about property taxes. I mean, there are a lot of people in Inglewood who that is an issue for, and that could actually potentially be a benefit of this, is a fixed price instead of the way we're right now. The providers raise the price all the time, and then do things like I do and switch providers to try and get it cheaper again. So.
Dane?
I actually just had a question. So I know in these base bids type of thing, it shows us options for 96 gallon, 64 gallon, 32 gallon. Are residents allowed to choose one or the other, or is everybody, like if we sign on, we say everybody's going to be at 96 gallon, everybody's at 64 gallon, everybody's at 32 gallon? Is that part of the deal, or is that something that we all can choose?
I was to understand the options were presented as 3 so that people could choose the level of service that fit best for them. That was my understanding.
It looks like on the, at least on the cost proposal summary though, it's almost broken down as a uniform 96 versus these other options, and there's different pricing for it, it looks like. I thought the same thing, Steve, that the idea was to provide flexibility as far as what citizens want to select for their size, depending on how much they throw. So I was I didn't realize we were getting just one alternative. We might have baked that into the RFP, I don't recall.
I think we wanted to get their pricing on both just to weigh them, because the benefit of having the pay-as-you-throw, which would be the 32, 64, 96 gallons, is that we could potentially, households that have very little trash, say that they're just a single person or senior or so forth, that they could pay less because they don't have as much trash, and you pay more if you have a lot of trash. And that kind of makes sense from an economist's perspective. The benefit then of the other approach, and I think we have to recommend an approach to the city council or give them some guidance. The other approach would be just everybody gets 96, whether you like it or not. Everyone pays the same price, and the benefit of that is just simplicity.
That's correct, Christine.
Steve?
That's right. As I look now, I realize the tabs on the sheet. The first tab is pay as you throw, which is the one where the citizens can choose the option. And the second tab is uniform container, where everybody gets the 96-gallon container, whether that's what they want or not.
And it looks like the cost savings for the 32-gallon versus the 96-gallon, it's less than a $4 difference, $19.35 for the 96 and $15.45 for the 32. I would expect that would be a little bit better than that for 1/3 the size, but
I had too, especially based on the pricing we had seen from a number of other cities. You definitely got a significant price cut if you used only a little bit of trash. Whereas this, there's not much incentive to go lower. So that was kind of a surprise to me, and one of the things I was hoping that either we could ask them about or put in our wish list for negotiating with them about, because one of our goals should be encouraging people to have less waste overall, and getting a much lower price for that is one of the ways to incentivize that behavior.
Cheryl?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so on that topic, I just wanted to point out on the 6th tab, it does talk about size change of containers. And I just thought that for $40, if you needed to change the size of your container after a one-time free change, was a little excessive. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Kanji?
Yeah, just in the interest of time, we've got about a half hour left. I just wanted to check in and see what next steps were going to be, or what we should be looking to accomplish in this meeting to set us up for success for the next. There's several questions that I have, but are we continuing just to pepper questions? So it's more of a logistical question for the director.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I will lower my hand. Yeah, I think, what we can do, I think we're having a good discussion right now. I would like to save a little time to go over the schedule and some of the other documents that were in the agenda. But I think what we can do is we can continue this discussion for a while, but then ask for each of you to send me back comments or questions, and then I'll compile those within the next few days and get those back out to you so that we can have a complete list of what we'll send to the companies. So
Okay.
No need to, if you don't feel like you can get all of them down now. I think the discussion is of more value than just throwing out the questions.
That
But,
sounds good.
yeah.
Logistically, we wanted to send those to Nancy though, right?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have Carson next.
I know we've been all over the place, but you had originally asked to respond to specifically Republic, but I had a couple specific to waste management.
Okay.
Okay. So on page 20 on theirs, it's kind of interesting where they're talking about their equipment, and they're saying that they're going to use the rear end load trucks in Inglewood with the Corrado. I guess that's partly what I'm confused about. So they're saying they're going to use Corrado can trucks, but that because of our alleys, they're going to use the rear end load, but then the rest of their document talks about the great aspects of the front load trucks. And then when I looked at the Corrado Can truck, like the company website, they actually say that their front load trucks work great in alleys. So I was just kind of, that's something I think we should ask them about, just to understand like what equipment they're actually planning on using and why they touted the front end truck in their proposal, but then have a little thing that says they're going to use the rear end one. And even though the manufacturer says the front end works in alleys. And I guess the front end ones, you know, there is a safety benefit because it's all in front, so the driver can see in front of them. And anyway, I thought it was an interesting thing to ask about.
Yep. Anyone else have thoughts or comments on? Yeah, please open it up to both waste management as well.
So I have Kanji and then Jeff.
A couple of questions I had was if we could get metric insight as far as the carbon footprint that they have projected for both companies, because I know that they had a discrepancy about the type of fuel that they would be using.
Yep.
And the other one was just the sharing of metrics. I like the idea that they would be sharing the week to week or month to month pickup and recycling to the city, and wondering if they would make that visibility to the citizens as well.
Then Jeff?
I'd like to really develop like a dashboard on the city website that you could go to and see those statistics on a regular ongoing basis.
That'd be amazing.
It's a good idea. Jeff?
Yeah, Kanji, we must be on this same wavelength, but I think it's worth noting that it looks like Waste Management, I think they said 80% of their fleet is powered by clean burning, near zero emissions compressed natural gas fuel. I think Republic are they straight diesel? It's also something to consider, you know, for these trucks are going to be driving through our neighborhoods and we'll be breathing that air for a long time. Not necessarily a dollars and cents consideration, but I thought that was a worthy distinction to note.
Christine?
Yeah, my comment was on that exact subject. I noticed on the Republic website, they do brag that they use a lot of CNG trucks. And I was surprised that then in this proposal specifically, they proposed buying new diesel trucks. And that was one of the questions I would like to ask them in an interview is, would they consider a CNG truck? And then some details going along with that. And this goes for Waste Management as well. I'm wondering what percentage, if any, of the CNG going into those trucks comes from their own landfill. In other words, using waste to turn it into essentially a renewable fuel, so to speak. And I think that Waste Management does that, and I'd be curious for this proposal or just in general, what percent of their fuel for these trucks would come from their own landfill versus just regular natural gas. And then the same, kind of along the same lines for Republic. Do they own a landfill? Could they get landfill gas from that? Could they put that into CNG trucks? Is that something they do? Or is it that diesel is our only option here?
Carson?
Oh, sorry. Can I add one more thing on that subject? Sorry about that. I would also like to ask them in their interviews if they have looked at and if they would consider in the future, not right away, but in the future, doing a cost comparison about moving towards electric trucks, especially considering their state grants now that cover the incremental difference between an electric truck and a regular truck. So in theory, they could get, in the coming years, get a truck for the same price if they got that grant from the state. And I'm sure that's on their radar, but I would just like to hear their answers for that.
Okay, Carson?
This is a little bit more out there, but maybe not. I think some of you all know about this stuff, but so our wastewater treatment plant has that modification now that generates that fuel that comes off of it, right? I think, member Fraser, you know about that, right? Is it possible that that could be something that we could tie into this whole deal, that could be fuel that they use for the trucks?
I think it's injected straight into Excel's pipeline on site, but there could presumably be a way to fuel it right there. I know other cities have done that, who have similar options. That would be kind of cool. Fueling our own trucks off our own waste.
Totally.
Yeah, I can certainly ask about that. I'm not sure if the, yeah, what's coming out of the plant, is that usable as CNG? Or, yeah, that's, I can ask. Okay. Others?
Sorry,
Cheryl?
Kanji?
This is more a logistical proposal again. Is there a way to get a list of these questions that are submitted to Nancy so that we can start upvoting them, so we can prioritize the ones that are most important to the members here?
Absolutely. So maybe let's talk for a few minutes about logistics. So I'm just gonna stop sharing this screen and go to the, share the, so if we go down to the schedule here, so the idea is that we would talk about questions tonight, and then give those to the firms, and then set up some time to come back, set up interviews with them, but then come back either in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks to review our scoring sheets. We don't have to do that step. So what we could do instead is set a date for when you want to get questions back to me. And then to your point, Kanji, we could get that initial list. Maybe I'll just throw out some dates, but by next Friday, which would give you guys a little over a week, but there is a holiday weekend in here. But let's say next Friday, we get questions back. I send those out to the group. You can either add on, or we can see where, if you've answered all the questions. And then, so basically one iteration before they're sent to the companies. Or we can extend that longer or shorter, whatever.
That makes sense. I like that.
Does that date, let's see, that would be the 11th. So would that, is that a reasonable time frame?
That would work for me.
That would work.
Be fine for me.
Sure.
So that schedule that I have pulled up here, so would it be possible to meet then either the week of September 14th or the 21st to kind of go over those questions, and then continue to kind of have some of these discussions about, you know, where we go from here? Or do you want to do the interviews first, or do you want me to try and schedule that tour with the waste management facility?
Able to enlarge that by any chance? I can't.
Yeah.
It is in the agenda packet too.
I will go there.
Director, could you repeat the options that you suggested?
Sure. Let me just call up that. I'm gonna.
So this should be a little bit bigger here, hopefully, that you can see it. Is that better? Okay.
Getting better.
Okay. So the options would be is that, so what are our next steps? So we've kind of got a game plan to formulate our series of questions for the two proposers. And then either we do go straight to the interviews, or we have another meeting of just our group before the interviews. And then do we want to slot in that tour of the waste management MRF facility sometime in there?
Could I add an additional one in there? If we could get that matrix fee visibility, both of those on, so if we could just list out, you know, those various different scenarios as well as the price breakdowns and then the end to end. I think that would really inform a lot of the questions that we have.
Okay.
Is there any concern that by touring a waste management facility, we might be providing some sort of advantage to waste management over Republic?
It might be perceived that way, yeah, even though that might not be the intent.
Wouldn't we be able to tour both of them ideally?
I'd agree with that. Even just put out there the proposal that we're requesting to see the facilities.
Yeah, I could certainly ask Republic to make that same offer.
Marcy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm confused. Who are we supposed to send these questions to? Is it to Maria or to Nancy or to the chair?
To Nancy.
Because I heard something
right
about
now,
the
Marcy.
chair too in there. Pardon me?
To Nancy.
Okay.
Hopefully,
Okay, thank you.
at the end of the meeting here, we're going to establish a chair and vice chair, so we don't have those.
Yeah,
those
I
folks
just
right
heard that earlier, so I didn't
Okay.
know exactly who the questions for that we have for these two companies. Who do they go to, and when did you want them by, Nancy?
I believe Director DeAndrea said September 11th. Is that correct?
Okay, I saw 9/11 there. Okay, by 9/11, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask, so any feedback on like what we do first or second? After we get the interview or the first set of questions finalized and back to the two firms, do we want to have another meeting before we have the interviews, or should I set those up?
I think it would be nice to go right into, if we have a good list of questions, if everyone's reviewed these RFPs, I'd like to ask these questions directly to some of these providers. I'm open to meeting again prior to that. Might be nice to have a little back and forth with them directly.
I agree.
Okay.
Me too.
Great. And I will work though and get you that kind of complete view of the prices that people would be charged. So really it's the price from the company, that admin fee, and then the tipping fees that we'd have to cover. As I wrote in the memo, the tipping fees, I took that out of the equation so that we would keep that apples to apples for any proposers that would come in. So that will be, those are the only two additions on top of these costs. But I will summarize those and show you the detailed breakdown. I'm running that past our finance group right now and the city manager to review that. That's why I don't have the admin fees finalized yet.
And I wasn't quite clear. Are you also planning on reaching out to Republic, or is the committee on board with that to see if they would offer some view of their facilities to us as well?
Yeah, that was my intent. I was gonna reach out to them and see if they'd make the same offer for a tour for us.
I think one of the things we could do when we're answering questions is maybe again get both companies to answer questions for us at the same time. You know, so they have a little bit of peer pressure to live up to their competition a little bit too. I think it's a important thing for both of them to see equally what we want out of this deal too, because that way we're not asking, you know, one question of one and another question of another. It could get into kind of, I don't know, just not us coming across the same way to each company on what our priorities are. And I think it'd be important for us to talk to both companies at the same time. Is that our understanding of this next question session with the companies?
I think this first list will involve a lot of the same questions to both firms, and then some very specific ones like the ones we were talking about the vehicles. In the interview though, I'm guessing that in the interview, they'll want to do that individually without the other firm in the room.
So that they're not sharing sensitive cost data with each other.
My guess is that's what they would want to share internal processes with their competitors, but may with us.
I like what Member Borman suggested, though. I mean, it makes sense to present a consistent thing and have them get the same feeling from us. I mean, I also understand why they wouldn't want it, but I like the idea of interviewing them together.
We could also just have one person ask them the same list of questions, right?
Yeah, I think a written
answers are fine.
What was that?
I said I think written answers are fine. They can, we'll send those out, you know, I mean, separately. I'd still like to tour both facilities, but same list of questions, go out to them separately and confidentially, and then they have an opportunity to provide those answers written, and maybe invite them to a meeting if we want, but I think written ought to be fine. Better to document that.
Written could allow, this is kind of a question I'm formulating in my head. Written, could that allow us to propose some negotiating points about potentially tweaking or lowering some of the prices? Whereas if we just asked them directly in a meeting, they would say, well, we'd have to go back to our bosses, et cetera, and we can't give you an answer.
Right. And we want everything documented anyway, so we do want everything in writing.
Some things would be, you know, lend themselves to conversation though, like the types of trucks and why using one truck over another, and some of the environmental concerns we have. Like, I think discussion with them, there's value to that as well. And we can always follow up with getting anything that comes out of that conversation in writing.
Well, I think that lends towards a service level agreement that we need to kind of iron out in this proposal too. And those, I think that having a conversation with them later on is important, especially in regards to service level. But anyway, this meeting is getting long. Aren't we supposed to appoint a chair? And I'd like to nominate Jeff Frazier for that.
Yeah, let me just.
I think Kanji should.
Oh, no, that's fine. I lowered my hand.
Oh, I think Kanji should be the co-chair. So those are my ideas.
Okay.
I second that.
I'll second that.
Wait.
I respectfully decline. I apologize. I can't take that responsibility currently.
Wait a minute. Have we already decided before anybody else can make a nomination?
No.
No, we have a motion on the floor. Could you, I couldn't see who made the motion. Was it you, Brenda?
I made a motion to appoint Jeff Frazier as the
I'm
chair.
sorry.
Yes.
Who is I? Could you identify
Brenda is
yourself?
speaking.
Brenda?
Can you see me on the video? Brenda is speaking.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. So Brenda nominated Jeff.
Okay, well, this is Marcy, and I'm going to nominate Carson for
Okay,
the
hold on.
chair.
Okay, give me 1 second, please. And who was the second on Jeff?
Yeah, so when you make a motion, there has to be a second.
Does anybody second the nomination of Jeff?
Remember,
I would second it.
Kawanabe did, I thought.
Yeah, and I'll second that if he doesn't. It's Matt.
I'll third it then.
Okay. I have Brenda and Kanji. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor for that. We can only have one motion on the floor. I can take nominations. So the second motion is Marcy is nominating Carson. Do I have a second?
Yes,
Who is yes?
I would like
please?
to, this is Cheryl Stewart,
Thank
and
you.
I would like to second Carson.
Okay. Any other nominations for chair?
I'd like to
I'd like to
nominate
no-
Stephen Ward.
Okay, please.
Second.
This is Dane Borman.
Okay, Dane moves. And who was the second? Christine?
Second from Christine.
Third it.
For Dane. Okay. Any other nominations? Going once? Going twice? Okay. So the first motion, whoops, sorry, I lost my sheet. Our first motion, which was made by Brenda Hupka and seconded by Kanji Kawanabe. I know I said that wrong and I do apologize. So that is to, the nomination is for Jeff Frazier to be your chair. So I'm going to take a vote on that. Brenda, how do you vote?
I raised my hand.
Oh, can you,
Yay.
we have to do a verbal roll call, sorry.
Yay, I raised, yes.
Okay, Carson?
Nay.
Okay, so an N. And Cheryl?
Nay.
Christine?
Yay.
Dane?
Yay.
And Felicia's not here. Jeff?
Nay.
Are you turning down the nomination?
I would propose a more qualified alternative in Stephen Ward and table the vote until we could vote on his nomination.
I could second that.
Okay, hold on, guys.
We
Okay,
still need two people though.
hold on. We're doing chair, please, first.
I know, I'm just telling you.
Jeff moves to table, and who seconded?
Brenda,
Brenda seconded, okay. All right, so we have to move on the table, or vote on the table. So we're moving to table Jeff's nomination. Brenda?
yay.
Carson?
Yay.
Cheryl?
Yay.
Christine?
Yay.
Dane?
Yay.
Yay.
Jeff?
Yay.
Kanji?
Yay.
Marcy?
Yay.
Matt?
Yeah.
Yay. Steve?
Aye.
Okay. So the motion,
Busy.
I'm sorry, the motion to table passes. The next motion on the table is moved by Marcy, seconded by Cheryl, nominating Carson Green as your chair. So that is what we are voting on now. Carson Green as chair. Brenda?
Nay.
I'm sorry.
Nay.
Oh, so no. Carson?
No.
Sure. Yeah, I would take it if you guys wanted me to.
Okay. Cheryl,
Yay.
Christine?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. Yes or no, please?
No.
No, thank you. Dane?
No.
Felicia's not here. Jeff?
Nay.
Okay. Kanji?
Nay.
Okay. Marcy?
Yes.
Thank you. Matt?
No.
Okay. And Steve?
No.
Okay, give me a moment, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. Okay, so the motion fails 3-7. So now we're moving on to, help me out. Dane moved. Christine
For
seconded.
Stephen Ward. Yeah.
Yes, Dane moved. Christine seconded to nominate Steve Ward as your chair. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that, okay, so we're voting on Steve Ward as chair. All right, Brenda,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
you, Cheryl,
Yes.
you, Christine,
Yes.
thank you, Dane,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
all right, Kanji,
Yes.
thank you, Marcy,
Yes.
okay, Matt,
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes, and thank you.
So it has
The great unifier.
unanimously passed. Steve Ward is now the chair. So now we will take nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Carson as vice chair.
Okay, give me 1 second. Steve moves. Do I have a second?
This is Marcy. I second it.
Marcy seconds. For Carson. Any other nominations?
Can I nominate Kanji? Or will he respectfully decline for that too?
I'll respectfully decline, but thank you, Christina.
Okay, so we're going to take that one off.
Could I nominate Christine Brinker?
Christine, do you accept?
Sure.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second. This is Matt.
Thank you for identifying. Okay, any other nominations? Brenda, I see your hand up. I'm sorry. Did you want to say
Oh,
something?
no, I was trying to get my dog to settle down.
Okay. All right, so we have 2
Hi.
nominations on the floor. Any others? Or, yeah. Going once? Twice? Okay. Motion on the floor, moved by Steve Ward, seconded by Marcy Brown for Carson as vice chair. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Brenda, how do you vote?
This is for vice chair
This
for,
is vice chair for
which one?
Carson Green.
no,
Okay, Carson?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, Christine?
Yes.
Yes. Dane?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kanji?
Yes.
Okay, Marcy?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
And Steve?
Yes.
So motion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion passes 7-3. Therefore, the second nomination fails. Okay. Carson Green is the vice chair.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Welcome
for stepping
aboard,
up.
everybody.
you got through the meeting.
Great. So the next meeting, Steve will run that. And meanwhile, I'll put together those questions that were asked internally that I could answer. I'll get those out to you tomorrow. And then we'll shoot for Friday, September 11th summary of the questions for the both respondents. And I'll start actually, I'll prompt you with the questions Christine had already created as well as the ones that we've discussed tonight. So just to get you started. And I'll try and get those, probably not tomorrow, it'll probably be Tuesday before that. And then you can return those, any new questions or additions to that back to Nancy by September 11th. All right, sound like a game plan?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Good.
so
Cheryl, your hand is raised. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I must have pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can lower it.
approach this, and so it was a good meeting, I thought. So thank you all for your participation and your time. Take care.
Great. Good night.
Thank you.
Night
Have a
all.
good night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Night, everybody.